Fasting, Feasting is a novel by Indian writer Anita Desai, first published in 1999 in Great Britain by Chatto and Windus. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize for Fiction in 1999. Plot summary. Edit. Anita Desai's novel of intricate family relations plays out in two countries, India and the United States. The core characters comprise a family living in a small town in India, where provincial customs and attitudes dictate the future of all children. Girls are to be married off and boys are to become as educated as possible. The story focuses on the life of the unmarried main character, Uma, a spinster, the family's older daughter, with Arun, the boy and baby of the family. Uma spends her life in subservience to her older demanding parents, while massive effort and energy are expended to ensure Arun's education and placement in a university in Massachusetts. The younger daughter Aruna gets married. In part 2 the reader is introduced to Arun in America. Therefore, we can compare and contrast the Indian and the American culture. Rather a series of events from life than a complexly plotted work, we follow the fortunes of Uma and Arun as they engage with family and strangers and the intricacy of day-to-day living. The novel is in two parts. The first part is set in India and is focused on the life of Uma, who is the overworked daughter of Mama and Papa. She is put upon by them at every turn, preparing food, running errands. In the early part of the novel we see her struggling at school. She is not very bright but loves the sisters who teach and appreciate her. Finally, she is made to leave school and serve her parents. We meet many interesting characters through her. Ramubai is a traveling bon vivant who tries to show Uma a good time. He is banished by her parents. Another character is the religious Meera Masi, who tells Uma all the tales of Krishna and takes her to the ashram, allowing her to escape her mother's domination for a time. Uma's parents attempt to marry her off on 3 occasions. On the first occasion, the chosen man fell for Uma's younger sister, Aruna. On the second, her parents accept her marriage on behalf of her before finding out later that their dowry has been spent and the engagement is cancelled. On the third occasion, a marriage took place, but it turns out the Uma's new husband already has a wife. She lives with his sisters while he lives in another town, spending her dowry on his ailing business. Uma's father quickly spirits her home and gets her marriage annulled. Her family then gives up on the attempts to marry her off and instead focus on their younger daughter. We are also told of the episode of Anamika's, Uma's cousin, sad fate. She has won a scholarship to Oxford, but her parents insist that she get married. She does and fails to please her husband by providing him with children. He keeps her for a time as a servant, but eventually she dies by burning. It is strongly hinted that her in-laws killed her. The final scene of part 1 is the immersion of Anamika's ashes in the sacred river. We are left with great sympathy for Uma and simple kindness as she survives as best she can in a not altogether friendly world. In part 2 we meet Arun, Uma's privileged brother. He is attending college in America and during summer holidays he lives with the Pattons, an all-American family. Again, the plot is not complex or intricate. The events are told in a serial manner as Arun encounters them. Of note is his intense dislike of American food and cooking methods. He is dismayed at the behavior of Melanie, the daughter who is deeply troubled and suffering from bulimia. Although Mrs. Patton seems to care about Melanie, she does little to help. While apparently close, the family are actually distant from one another, something very different from Aaron's experience of family life in India. Arun spends most of his time alone and isolated. Arun tries his best to escape from Western society but in vain. In a small town in India in the late 1970s, Uma and her younger sister Aruna are growing up in a traditional Indian household. Their parents, called only Mama and Papa, try to control the destinies of their daughters by teaching them domestic, traditionally feminine skills. Uma takes little interest in marriage or household chores, rather, she loves attending her convent school, despite her failing grades. Mama and Papa, or Mama Papa, as Uma thinks of them, show little patience for Uma. Papa, a middle government magistrate with a fragile ego, dominates his family life by dictating the family's daily activities and everyone's futures. Priding herself as the wife of an important man, Mama cooperates with Papa on almost every issue. After Arun is born, Mama and Papa demand that Uma leave school to care for her baby brother. Uma runs away to the convent school and fruitlessly begs Mother Agnes to talk Mama Papa into letting her back into school. Uma has her first seizure on the convent floor after Mother Agnes says she is powerless to help her. Uma's beautiful cousin Anamika has the opportunity to go to Oxford University, but her parents Lily Auntie and Bakul Uncle don't allow her to go. Instead, they marry her off to the wealthiest, most educated man they can find. Soon, Uma and her parents hear that Anamika's husband and mother-in-law beat her and treat her like a servant. As Uma grows up, men show little interest in her, preferring her younger sister. After 3 failed marriage attempts, including 2 dowry scams and 1 old man who marries Uma and then abandons her, Mama and Papa give up on trying to marry Uma off. Aruna, meanwhile, receives many marriage proposals, and she chooses Arvind, a wealthy man from Bombay. After her expensive ceremony, Aruna leaves for a new life in Bombay and visits only occasionally. When she does visit, she acts superior to her family, especially Uma. Given great care and attention, Arun studies to the point of exhaustion every night under the supervision of a forceful papa. Quiet and expressionless, Arun has been vegetarian since childhood, to the dismay of his parents, who see it as weak and old-fashioned. Neglected and confined, Uma tries whenever possible to get away from home. On one occasion, her relative Meera Masi, a religious widow who travels the country freely, tricks Mama Papa into letting her bring Uma with her to an ashram, or pilgrimage house. There, Uma wanders around freely and happily for a month, until Mama Papa send her cousin Ramu to bring her back. Women in the community try to bring Uma out of her entrapped family life, inviting her to socialize and work with them. On another occasion, Drive Dutt comes to Mama Papa's house to invite Uma to come work for her, but Mama and Papa refuse. Uma's eyes become painful, but Papa refuses to allow her to seek medical care. One night, the family hears that Anamika has been found dead, burned to death on her porch. Whether it is suicide or murder is unclear. Lily auntie and Bakul uncle visit to distribute Anamika's ashes in the sacred river. The novel now switches its focus onto Arun. After much hard work, Arun wins a scholarship to study in America. When he arrives to Massachusetts, he tiredly withdraws, spending his first year in school by himself. The following summer, Arun reluctantly stays with an American family, Mr. Patton and Mrs. Patton and their children Rod and Melanie. Mrs. Patton warmly welcomes Arun, but he soon sees how she struggles against the strong will of her unappreciative husband. Mr. Patton and the athletic, self-oriented Rod ignore Mrs. Patton and Melanie, focusing on work, working out, and playing sports. Mrs. Patton takes Arun shopping with her, insisting that he teach her how to go vegetarian. Meanwhile, Arun becomes disgusted with American excess. He soon finds that Melanie, the daughter, is bulimic, and anxiously tries to find a way to tell the oblivious Mrs. Patton what is wrong. Meanwhile, one day in the grocery store, a cashier tells Mrs. Patton that she looks pregnant. Mrs. Patton becomes obsessed with sun tanning, further neglecting her daughter. Toward the end of the summer, Arun and Melanie go with Mrs. Patton to a pond. Arun delightedly enjoys the feeling of escaping himself when swimming. Later, while Mrs. Patton is sunbathing, Arun goes to look for Melanie, who has disappeared. He finds her half-conscious in a pile of her own vomit. Mrs. Patton soon arrives, shocked at what she sees. Melanie enters into a rehabilitative institution, and Rod leaves for college. Mr. Patton takes on a second job, and Mrs. Patton becomes interested in Eastern spirituality. Arun receives a package carefully packed by Uma, but he gives the contents away to Mrs. Patton, and he leaves, returning to school at the university. The novel opens in the modern day with Uma, middle-aged and still unmarried, at home in India in the summer, taking orders from Mama and Papa, or Mama Papa, as she thinks of them. At first, they are instructing her with great importance about how they wish to have their afternoon tea. This leads to them barking orders at her, very specifically, about how to do many different household chores at once. They anxiously debate with each other about how best to instruct Uma to prepare a box of care goods to send to Arun, who is attending university in America. They worry that he has a warm enough sweater, and enough tea. Uma grows very flustered trying to meet their growing and changing demands. Her parents show no concern or even awareness for how their way of ordering Uma around is making her feel. Mama and Papa treat Uma, their daughter, very differently than they treat Arun, their son. They put a lot of thought into their package for Arun. Meanwhile, Mama Papa expect a lot from Uma, and their way of piling demands onto her shows that they give little thought to whether or not Uma can actually meet those demands. They expect her to have no other needs, desires, or priorities other than meeting their needs. It's as if they see their daughter as an extension of themselves and their will, rather than as her own person. Uma's use of the term mama papa to think of her parents shows that she imagines them to be an inseparable unit, without individual wishes. Themes. Gender and social roles theme icon family life and individual freedom theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon. Uma struggles to remember a time when mama papa had separate existences. She recalls that mama and papa have offered few memories of their childhoods before their young marriage. Mama's recollections focus on family and include remembering little transgressions, such as the women of her house sneaking sweets to their daughters and nieces, as sweets were only allowed to boys in her household. Papa's recollections focus on the struggles of his boyhood in poverty and his hard work to overcome those deprivations so that he could go to school and become a lawyer, such as studying under street lamps late into the night. This passage illustrates the importance of the collective family identity in rural India. Mama and Papa choose not to remember their past selves very much, because to do so may be challenging to their ideal of marriage and the family as the most important unit. Mama's recollections about sneaking the sweets betray the unequal treatment of girls and boys in her own family and the secret defiance of women against that inequality. Papa's recollections allow us insight into his own childhood poverty, and the values he places on education, at least for boys, and on very hard work. Themes. Gender and social roles theme icon family life and individual freedom theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon tradition India versus modernity West theme icon. Quotes. Uma remembers the only example of Mama having a separate life from Papa as being when Uma was young and Papa was still working as an attorney, and Mama would sneak off to play cards with the women in her neighborhood. Mama would laugh loudly at the card games with the other women and would show a coy, playful side to herself. When Papa would return from work, Mama would pretend that she had not left the house that day. Even Mama has a separate will and a separate self apart from Papa, but she only chooses to express it in small ways and only in the company of other women. At the card games, the women form a little secret world of their own. And even though a little card game might seem to be a fairly innocent transgression, it is the most rebellious that Mama can allow herself to be. Themes. Gender and social roles theme icon family life and individual freedom theme icon loneliness and togetherness theme icon. Uma recalls that in Papa's younger days when he played tennis, he made a very serious ceremony about having the family and the household servants facilitate his games and provide an audience. Mama would observe the games proudly, and she would get angry if his tennis suit hadn't been washed perfectly or if his lemonade wasn't ready when the game was over. Uma remembers that when her father was still a magistrate and the family had to make appearances at social gatherings, he would tolerate joking with colleagues and inferiors who jabbed at him, but always in a way that was harsh, establishing his superiority and social status. Mama makes a big deal out of Papa's tennis games as if his success in tennis were some kind of reflection on her. There is a gender inequality in their marriage, which reflects on the standards of their society in general. Mama is not permitted to indulge her hobbies openly, while Papa not only indulges his interests but demands that everyone else serve as audience. Papa can never seem weak in front of anyone, and he isn't even free to enjoy social occasions, because every interaction must display his authority and superiority. Themes. Still in the modern day, and Papa has had his car driven up to the front of the house. He declares that Mama and Uma need to get some exercise, so he takes them to the park. At the park, Uma is expected to walk with Mama, and the two walk slowly, Uma following Mama's pace, while Papa circles the park several times on his own. Uma hungrily smells roasted nuts and cooked gram, which is garbanzo bean flour, and watches interestedly at the crowd, while her mother criticizes passerby for their immodest dress or behavior. Papa decides when to order Mama and Uma to leave, and when Uma asks why they are hurrying, Mama says that Papa must have his lemonade. The fact that Papa mandates the trip to the park because he thinks that Mama and Uma need exercise shows how much he considers himself to be responsible for determining even the physical needs of the women in his household and for facilitating how they should be met. It is as if they are children. Uma shows a hunger, not just for the literal nuts and grams she smells in the park, but for the sensations, smells, and sights presented to her in the park. She wants to linger because she has gotten a taste for life outside the world of her family, and she's curious for more. Themes. Gender and social roles theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon tradition India versus modernity West theme icon. The novel flashes back to the past, to Uma's childhood. Uma remembers when Mama became pregnant with Arun, and she recalls this as the only time she noticed a significant discord between her parents' desires. Uma remembers the secrecy and shame surrounding news of her mother's pregnancy. The narrator indicates that the secrecy ensued because pregnancy is a sign of sex, particularly female sex, which is shameful. When Arun is conceived, Mama is older and the pregnancy is painful, and she wishes she could terminate it. But with just 2 daughters, Papa wants a son. So Mama feels she has no choice but to go through with it, however miserable it makes her health. Papa is proud when the boy is born, and Mama appears to welcome the son and recover her state of harmony with Papa. Uma remains interested in searching her memory for instance of her parents as separate individuals. If she can recall these instances, it may mean that being a part of a family doesn't necessarily mean losing oneself. The memory of her mother's pregnancy speaks to the importance of sons. For Papa, the importance of having a son outweighs the risk the pregnancy poses to Mama. The shame surrounding Mama's pregnancy shows a contradiction in their view of women's sexuality. While Papa wants the child, the end result of sex and pregnancy, he cannot acknowledge the pregnancy publicly without also acknowledging Mama as a sexual being. Themes: Gender and social roles. Theme icon: Family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: Tradition, India versus modernity, West. Theme icon: Loneliness and togetherness. Theme icon: Quotes. The novel flashes back a bit further, and shows young Uma going to the Catholic convent school. She is interested in everything she studies, but she gets failing grades in every subject. She loves the Western Christian religious atmosphere of the convent school, delighting in the religious education, the music, and looks up to the nuns, who are for the most part American and British. The nuns focus on proselytizing, but Uma seems neither aware nor bothered by this. Her grades are failing worse than ever when Arun is born, and when the nuns start sending notes home describing her bad scores, Mama tells Uma that there is no point in going to school any longer. Uma refuses to let Mama soothe her, shaking hands when Mama tells her that she must prepare herself for marriage, and that in the meantime it is her job to stay home with Arun. Uma's enthusiasm for going to school in spite of her failing grades reflects on her ongoing curiosity and interest in people, places and things. Unlike her father, who in Chapter 1 worked tirelessly to succeed in school to build his career, Uma's fondness for school is not goal-oriented. She enjoys the religious environment because even though the nuns have their own agendas, their perspective is different than her parents'. When Mama tells Uma she must stay at home with Arun, she begins a pattern of sacrificing Uma's needs and her desires in order to build a better life for Arun. Uma's role, they believe, is at home, and her value is in her domestic abilities rather than her education or the development of her mind or spirit. Chapter opens with a scene in the modern day, in the summer in India. Uma's mother tells her to pass the fruit bowl to her father, but Papa remains still and silent and does not take it. Mama interprets this silence as his nonverbal demand that the women peel and part the fruit for him. Following her mother's instructions, Uma helps her mother to silently feed her father an orange in an elaborate, almost ceremonial process, and when it is over, her mother sits back, proud and relieved. Papa feels so self-important that he does not even use words to express his demands. Mama accommodates Papa's sense of entitlement, and she considers waiting upon him to be a duty of not only herself, but also her daughter. Something as simple as eating an orange becomes a ceremony for Mama to proudly show her submission to Papa as patriarch, and to impose the same submission onto Uma. Themes: Gender and social roles. Theme icon: Tradition, India versus modernity, West. Theme icon: The novel flashes back to Uma's teenage years, after her baby brother Arun is born. While everyone else is napping during a hot afternoon, Uma runs away from home. She hires a rickshaw, a two-wheeled wooden cart, pulled by a man on a bicycle, to ride her to the convent school. There, she goes in search of Mother Agnes, the head nun, and falls at her feet, begging her to allow her to return to school, telling of her unhappiness at home with the baby. Mother Agnes embraces Uma, then tells her that she has done everything she can to convince Papa, and that now Uma should try to learn homekeeping. Uma shrieks, and has her first epileptic seizure on the convent floor. Mama blames the convent nuns for causing Uma's seizure, using the incident to justify her decision to keep Uma out of school. Uma is desperate to nurture a spirit of rebellion. She escapes to the convent school because it was the only place where she had her own separate daily existence and the promise of a future outside of Mama Papa, marriage and children. She sees Mother Agnes as an authority figure, who she believes has the power to stand up to her parents. Rather than find the support that she hopes for, However, she finds that not even Mother Agnes can advocate for Uma. She is left to face her fate, alone. Uma's seizure on the convent floor. Seizure represents the quiet rebellion of Uma's spirit and body against the life she has been assigned. Yet rather than help her to gain independence, the seizures only further hinder her. Themes: gender and social roles. Theme icon: family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: loneliness and togetherness. Theme icon: Uma settles into taking care of baby Arun. Mama and Papa attend nervously to Aaron's care, worrying over his diet, his every step, his progress, and making sure he has the best of everything. Uma observes that Aaron's birth is a great pride for Mama, who, to Uma's dismay, bases her happiness on her status as the mother of the son by an important politician. Uma forms the conclusion over the years that her mother and father appear to connect solely as partners in running their household, and not in any romantic way. Uma thinks to herself that she wouldn't like to have a marriage without love. Arun grows up to be sickly and weak, and he refuses even as a baby to eat meat. This greatly distresses his parents, who see meat as a sign of power and progress, and think of vegetarianism as rustic and old-fashioned. Uma's independent way of thinking is evident in her differing opinion that love should be at the heart of marriage, contrary to the norm for arranged marriages. The care that Mama Papa have for Arun is unequal to the care they put on their daughters, showing how they treat daughters as second-class children. Yet, they deny Arun's self-expression, just as they deny it of their daughters, when at an early age Mama Papa failed to accept his vegetarianism. His weak immune system and his dislike of meat set the stage for him to disappoint the high expectations of his parents. Themes: gender and social roles. Theme icon: family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: plenty feasting versus want fasting. Theme icon: tradition India versus modernity West. Theme icon: quotes. The story flashes forward briefly a few years, to Arun as a little boy playing in the bushes outside with Uma. She is sneaking unripened fruit and salt to him as a snack, and she reminds him of a time when he bit her on the finger as a baby. He does not think it is funny, and he threatens to tell their parents that Uma is sneaking forbidden snacks to him. This scares Uma, who jumps up and gets caught in the bushes, but Arun just laughs. Even as a little boy, Arun already knows that he has a more powerful place within the family than his older sister Uma. He uses his power as the boy child to threaten and scare Uma, as a way of manipulating her into keeping him happy. He is still a child and therefore playful, but the effect his threats have on Uma are real. Themes: the modern day, Mama and Papa have left home to attend a wedding. With few chances to be home alone, the now middle-aged Uma relishes the opportunity. She is in her room, cheerfully going through her jewelry and her other trinkets, when Aya, her family's servant, comes into her room and insists on brushing Uma's hair. Aya is complaining to Uma about her rebellious daughter Lakshmi, whom Aya beat after the girl ran away from her arranged marriage. Aya says that Lakshmi is trying to find work as a servant to support herself, for which Aya beats her more. Uma gets angry and scolds Aya for beating Lakshmi. Aya complains that she sacrificed everything for Lakshmi, and shows Uma her tattered clothing as an example. Uma angrily throws a handful of new sari garments from her dresser at Aya, who thanks Uma, and leaves the room. As a middle-aged adult, Uma no longer tries to escape by going into the outside world. Instead, she escapes by finding freedom in her solitude. When Aya speaks of beating Lakshmi for escaping her marriage, Uma's anger must also include her own anger at her parents for not allowing Uma her own life. Because traditional Indian social rules dictate obedience to one's parents, Uma can't direct her anger at her parents. So, she channels it at Aya, a servant. Uma's treatment of Aya betrays her own social status relative to her servant. To Aya, a good marriage for Lakshmi is better than a life in servitude such as her own. Themes: gender and social roles. Theme icon: family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: plenty feasting versus want fasting. Theme icon: tradition India versus modernity West. Theme icon: loneliness and togetherness. Theme icon: the novel flashes back to Uma's childhood again, to her memories of visits from her distant relative Meera Masi. To Uma's great admiration, Meera Masi, the widow of a disgraced family member, has dedicated her life to the god Shiva and spends her days traveling through the country, visiting different relatives and different Hindu temples. Uma loves Meera Masi's visits, even though Mama Papa disapprove of Meera Masi's traveling lifestyle, her vegetarianism, and her old-fashioned religious devotion. Uma recalls curling up around Meera Masi's feet and listening to her recite epic myths about the adventures of Hindu gods. Uma remembers wishing that real life were as magical and wondrous as the myths of gods. Uma admires Mira Masi because she leads the kind of life that Uma would like to have, free roaming, untethered to either parents or husband. While Mama Papa see Mira Masi as too old-fashioned in her religious fanaticism, she also represents to them the threat of female independence which they see as too modern. Traditional ways aren't necessarily more acceptable to Mama Papa. Uma's love of Mira Masi's magical stories shows her desire to have any other life than the one she has. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, tradition India versus modernity West theme icon, quotes. Mira Masi carefully cooks her food separately in her own stone oven outside, and while Mama Papa frown, Uma feels honored if Mira Masi lets her help in her food preparation. Every evening, Mira Masi goes down to the temple of Shiva to honor her chosen god in ritual prayer and blessing. Uma longs to feel the spiritual connection and magic that she perceives around Mira Masi's simple rituals, and she feels struck with emotion just hiding behind poles, watching Mira Masi at the temple. One evening, Mama Papa reluctantly allow Mira Masi to take Uma, Aruna, and Arun with her down to the river for her religious bathing. While Mama Papa have warned their children about the filth of the river and the danger of the big currents, only Aruna and Arun avoid getting in the water. But Uma fearlessly jumps into the water, eager to feel it wash over her, and nearly drowns. The invisible power Mira Masi attributes to her god Shiva frees her from feeling obligated to earthly authorities. Uma is drawn to the beauty and magic of religious ritual, and it represents to her a freedom from the weight of earthly authorities and rules. Her desire to wade thoughtlessly into the river is just like her desire to be consumed with religious fever. She longs to feel swept up, swept away with feeling. She wishes to be transported to another place, not just physically, but also inside herself. Unlike Arun and Aruna, Uma experiences an inner freedom from fear of nature and of danger. Themes: In Uma's middle age, her rebellious cousin Ramu surprises the family with a visit after adventuring at sea. Mama and Papa are unhappy to see Ramu, for this son of Lila auntie and Bakul uncle is the black sheep of the family, but Uma is thrilled. Against Mama and Papa's angry protests, Ramu persuades Uma into coming with him into the city to have dinner at a restaurant for the first time in her life. He reminds Mama and Papa of a time when he collected Uma from her attempts to run away to an ashram, a temple where worshippers stay as pilgrims. Uma accompanies Ramu to the Carlton Hotel, where she drinks shandy wine, laughs at Ramu's jokes, and enjoys the live music. On the way home, she cries that the night is over, and when she arrives home, she tries to recount her happiness to her mother, who refuses to hear, calling Uma an idiot and a hussy. Uma's cheerful hospitality toward Ramu in spite of her parents' judgment of him as the black sheep shows that Uma has her own way of judging goodness. Uma soaks in every moment of her little adventure to the restaurant with Ramu. It's not just the luxury of the fancy restaurant that she enjoys, but the laughter, the wine, and the temporary freedom to be enjoy herself. Uma's desire to share her happiness with Mama is innocent and shameless. Mama further isolates herself from Uma's true self by reproaching her. Uma is back in the house with no solitude, but in her heart and mind, she returns to her loneliness. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon, loneliness and togetherness theme icon. The story flips back to Uma's young adulthood. Mira Masi has grown older and weak with fever. She comes to visit the family, and Mama urges her not to travel to an ashram in the foothills. Mira Masi insists she will be okay if Uma can go with her. Feeling tricked, Mama lets Uma go. The perilous journey by beaten-down carriage and tough footpaths is all a big adventure for Uma. Once at the ashram, Mira Masi focuses on her religious rituals, giving Uma the chance to wander freely all day through the river paths around the ashram. Uma realizes, while falling asleep on the stone floor beside Mira Masi, that she has never been so happy as now. Uma has another seizure while there, but the pilgrims and worshippers respond to Uma's seizure with wonder and respect. Fellow pilgrims readily accept Mira Masi's explanation that Uma seizes because she is chosen by Lord Shiva. Only when Mama and Papa feel cornered by social situations do they allow Uma to leave home. Rather than to see her epilepsy as a curse, as Mama Papa do, Mira Masi and the other pilgrims see Uma's seizures as a sign that she is holy. Their opinion represents a truth about Uma that Mama Papa cannot see. Uma is special, that she has a spiritual plenty inside of her. As Uma wanders by herself at the ashram, she finds happiness because she is free to meander and find a kind of freedom that she finds only in solitude. Uma's ability to find happiness just in her own company makes her different than most other characters in the novel. Themes: gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, plenty feasting versus want, fasting theme icon, loneliness and togetherness theme icon. After a month at the ashram, two unexpected visitors turn out to be cousin Ramu and Arun, a young boy at the time. Ramu tells Uma that he has come on Papa and Mama's instructions to reclaim her, for she has stayed much longer than they expected, and they are imagining her to have been kidnapped. Meera Masi prepares herself to face down Ramu, who she sees as a hooligan for his bad manners and Western, metropolitan ways. The two fight quietly all afternoon over Uma's fate, but in the end, Ramu wins Uma herself over by charming and distracting her with his laughter and warmth. Uma is already on the carriage out of the ashram before she sadly realizes what she is allowing to happen, and then she refuses to eat or laugh all the way home. While there are huge differences in character between Ramu and Meera Masi, both relatives at different times offer Uma the chance to have adventure. Yet, it is only Meera Masi who refuses to cooperate with the authority that Mama Papa try to have over Uma. As a woman free of the authority of any man, whether husband, brother, or father, Meera Masi seems to be immune to the power that male relatives have in their society. Uma's innocent love of Ramu keeps her from realizing the freedom that she is giving up, but when she does, she feels a great loss. Themes: in the modern day, the local jeweler has come to Mama Papa's house to show his spread before Mama and Uma, as he does every year. He makes the same joke he has made to her since she was born, saying, "Am I to make baby's wedding jewelry this year?" The joke still makes Uma blush, even though she is now middle-aged. Uma's age is marked by many factors in the novel, and the jeweler must know that she is now past the typical marriageable age for her society. Still, he flatters her by pretending it is still possible for her to marry in their society. Themes: gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon. During Uma's teenage years, all the female cousins in her family are nearing marrying age. Everyone's favorite cousin, the gracious, beautiful and intelligent Anamika, wins a scholarship to Oxford, but her parents, Lila auntie and Bakul uncle, do not consider allowing her to go. Rather, to her private sadness, they stash her award off into a cabinet and bring it out only to show visitors. Anamika has many suitors, but her parents marry her off to a much older man because he matches her in degrees and prestige. The man pays no attention to Anamika, but rather appears to worship his own mother. Soon after their wedding, news floats to Uma's family that Anamika's husband and mother-in-law regularly beat her and that she is treated like a household servant. Soon, Anamika miscarries due to a beating, becoming infertile. Uma hopes that her husband will send her back home to her parents, but Anamika doesn't return. Anamika holds all the female virtues valued by traditional Indian society. She is beautiful and accomplished, yet humble and obedient. But Anamika's husband, chosen only for his status and not his character, cannot be pleased, and the abusive marriage destroys everything good in Anamika. Anamika enters into a marriage of prestige, and yet she becomes the most misfortunate character in the novel. The system of arranged marriage loses legitimacy in the case of Anamika. Her violent miscarriage is symbolic. Having no love for her, her husband destroys not only her spirit but her ability to have children, her potential to create life, to begin again. In the modern day, Uma is visiting the family's neighbor Mrs. Joshi, who offers Uma homemade ice cream. Uma quickly eats 2 cups of ice cream, and when she leaves, Mrs. Joshi comments that Uma is still just like a child, even despite her advancing age. Uma's life has not forced her to grow up, as the lives of many women around her have done. Yet, Uma's childlike nature, rather than being admired by those around her, becomes a point of scorn and reproach. Themes: gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon. Right after Anamika's marriage, Mama is sending pictures of Uma out to relatives and friends, who are all helping to find a marriage for Uma. Their neighbor, Mrs. Joshi, arranges for the Sayal family from another town to come meet Uma. Against Uma's resistance, Mama makes Uma dress up in a fancy sari and powder her face, and play her hair. Mama reproaches Uma for never having learned how to cook or housekeep because she was so busy playing. When the young man comes with his sister, he shows no interest in Uma. After hearing no word after weeks, Mrs. Joshi comes to tell Mama that the Sayal's son would rather marry Aruna. Mama flares in anger at Mrs. Joshi and at the Sile family for the offensive offer to marry the younger daughter before the first is married. Nevertheless, Mama begins to notice that Aruna's appeal is worth cultivating. Mama thinks Uma has wasted her youth, because Mama judges the value of women only in the status of their marriage matches. Uma's childhood preference for learning at the convent school and playing allow her no space in her family or society. The fact that the young man notices Aruna instead betrays not only a difference in beauty between the two sisters, but also a difference in dispositions. Aruna is ready to grow up and get out in the socially prescribed way. Uma doesn't want to be treated like a child, yet she remains free and childlike, uninterested in society's expectations. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, tradition India versus modernity West theme icon, quotes. Mama Papa respond to an ad in the newspaper for a family looking for a bride for their son. They meet the Goyal family, and the family makes an offer, asking that the dowry be given immediately to buy more property for their estate, which they promise to share between both families. Eager to marry Uma off, Mama Papa agree, and give the dowry. But a few weeks later, they receive word from the Goyal family that their son has decided to pursue his education instead. The dowry cannot be returned, for it has already been spent. Mrs. Joshi scolds Mama for not informing her sooner, as it is well known that the Goyal family routinely scams families. She tells Mama to be grateful that the marriage did not go through, for who knows what they might have done to Uma to get rid of her so they could scam more families. Just as Anamika's parents did not investigate her husband beyond merely his social status before marrying Anamika off, neither do Mama Papa think through their choice. Mrs. Joshi's comment that Mama should be grateful that the marriage did not go through underlines the similarities in situations, yet with different outcomes. In both instances, calamity threatens to befall the daughters because of the haste of the parents to fulfill society's expectations and customs. Yet, Uma never marries, and instead stays with her parents and remains safe, while Anamika does not. Themes: In the modern day, Mama wakes Uma to tell her that thieves are stealing guavas from their trees. Mama remarks that while everyone else sleeps, only she guards the house from danger. Back in time, marriage proposals flood in for Aruna, but Uma's unmarried state keeps Mama Papa from pursuing them. Aware of her own appeal, Aruna begins to act with greater confidence and undertone sexuality, to Mama Papa's alarm and pride. Aruna starts to withdraw her sympathies for Uma and replace them with a feeling of superiority. Everyone in the house starts to withdraw from Uma, treating her like an outcast. Uma notices, and wonders if the family unit really can promise to love and protect its members. She thinks of the abuse and isolation that her cousin Anamika suffers, in the marriage that her own parents had arranged, as an example of the failure of family to do what it claims. Mama sees herself as the only one wary of thieves in the garden, a metaphor for Mama and Papa's confidence that they know best how to protect their children from trouble. Yet, in reality, they cannot protect Uma from false marriage proposals or from her isolation when she fails to meet their expectations of marriage. Uma begins to realize the hypocrisy of the family institution, particularly in the misplaced focus that parents have on securing the best marriages. Mama Papa and Anamika's parents are so concerned with marrying their daughters off, but in the process, their daughters become endangered or, in Uma's case, outcasted. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, loneliness and togetherness theme icon. Mama Papa make a last effort at marrying Uma off. The old man from the newspaper ad accepts the offer, but when he arrives for the wedding, Uma is horrified to find that the man is old, fat, and shows no interest in her. During the ceremony, the groom indifferently asks the priest to cut the ceremony short. Once at her new home, the husband leaves immediately, telling Uma that he has to work in Meerut. The women don't speak to Uma, but bark directions to her about cooking and chores. One day, Papa arrives, raging at the family, telling Uma that the husband has another wife and family in Meerut, and needed the dowry to save his business. Upon returning home, Aruna asks Uma if her husband touched her, and Uma says no, but privately wonders about the experiences she could have had. Mama Papa give up on marrying Uma, and Uma feels like she has lost all her value to her parents and family. Uma is at home alone in the modern day, while Mama Papa are out at a bridge game. Rarely by herself, Uma enjoys the opportunity to go into her room and go through her old Christmas card collection. Most of the cards are from the nuns and teachers at the convent school, and going through the collection makes her think of them. She gets the desperate urge to use her alone time to call a friend, but realizes she has nobody to call. Anamika is unreachable, Aruna is too busy with her own life, and Ramu is nowhere to be found. She gets the courage to call Mrs. O'Henry, a Christian missionary lady who worked with the school. Mrs. O'Henry is not at home, and Uma angrily slams the phone. When Mama Papa return, Uma pretends to be asleep. Always sleeping, her mother says, disapproving. Uma devotes any free time to looking through cards and trinkets from her childhood, a very long time ago, representing how Uma herself is frozen in time, denied an adult life by her parents. Constantly with her parents, Uma hungers for solitude. Yet, when she is finally alone, she is lonely. She has no friends to call, for everyone she thinks to call is from her past. When she tries to call Mrs. O'Henry, Uma gets angry because it isn't just Mrs. O'Henry who isn't at home. Rather, it is as if the whole world has become unavailable to Uma, and left her behind. Themes. Family life and individual freedom. Theme icon plenty, feasting, versus want, fasting. Theme icon loneliness and togetherness. Theme icon. Back in time, Aruna chooses from among her suitors Arvind, the handsomest, richest young man from an urban background. They have a sophisticated, westernized wedding at the showy Carlton Hotel, which nobody in their town has ever done. Aruna insists on all of the wedding details, and arranges everything to stun both families and their community. During the cocktail party that Aruna arranges for the family and in-laws the night before, Uma has a seizure in front of a group of extended family. That night, Aruna yells at Uma for spoiling the event and Uma yells back. Aruna threatens Uma not to have a fit, as she calls the seizures, during the wedding ceremony. During Aruna's wedding, Uma is ignored, and the only person who remembers to ask how she is doing is Dr. Dutt, the charismatic female doctor who helped her when she had her seizure the night before. Aruna can be choosy in selecting her husband, in contrast with Uma, who was expected to accept whoever would take her. Unlike Uma's modest, somber wedding, Aruna's lavish wedding reflects the high value her parents put on her. The differences in the girls' weddings reflects the inequality in wealth, opportunity, and social status which the two sisters will experience all their lives. Uma has no control over the differences in beauty and charm by which this inequality is justified, just as she can't control the seizures for which Aruna blames her. Themes. Gender and social roles. Theme icon plenty, feasting, versus want, fasting. Theme icon tradition, India versus modernity, West. Theme icon. After the wedding, Aruna moves with her husband Arvind to a fancy flat in Bombay, visiting her family only rarely. When Aruna does come, she criticizes all of her family for their appearance, the appearance of the house, and their manners, calling them villagers. During her visits, Aruna takes no pity on Uma, but expects Uma to care for them as the maiden aunt. Mama and Uma unite against Aruna's criticism, and on one occasion laugh together over Aruna's suggestion that Uma shorten her hair like the women in Bombay. Uma and her parents take some comfort that Aruna also criticizes her husband for his dress and manners. Uma pities how she imagines Aruna must go through life always upset over the failure of everyone, including herself, to be perfect. She dresses her children up, but Mama and Uma are appalled at how bratty little Aisha and Dinesh are. Although Mama and Papa took greater pride in Aruna when she was young, the good marriage they wanted for her has only taken her further away from them. Aruna, in her new life in Bombay, manages to do what Uma only wishes she could do, escape the life and family she was born into, yet Aruna's escape does not bring her happiness. While Uma lost out on the chance to a glamorous life full of wealth and freedom from Mama Papa, it is she who feels sorry for Aruna. Uma allows herself to feel joy from simple things, to feel unconcerned by what other people think of her. If that is freedom, then it is Uma who is free, not Aruna. Themes. Family life and individual freedom. Theme icon plenty, feasting, versus want, fasting. Theme icon tradition, India versus modernity, West. Theme icon. On one visit home, Aruna brings her in-laws to bathe in the holy river near the house. Uma visits the local optometrist, who says she has a bad condition and must see a specialist in Bombay. Papa gets angry and says that the doctor in their town should be good enough. Later, Mama tells Aruna about the doctor's suggestion, in an attempt to get her help, but Aruna only says that it would be too expensive, that the local doctor is enough for Uma. When both families go to bathe in the river, Uma impulsively jumps off the boat, without looking. She sinks to the bottom, letting the current wash over her, while everyone shouts her name and tries to find her to pull her up. After they rescue her, Uma realizes that the water rushing over her was what she had wanted most, and she wishes she hadn't been saved. Uma's family panics when she jumps, joining forces to try to save her life. Yet, ironically, refusing to address Uma's need to see a specialist, Papa and Aruna show no concern for Uma's health. It is surprising that Aruna, who shuns the village as beneath herself, would think the village doctor would be enough for Uma. Uma's family expects her to be content with less than everyone else. With nobody caring for Uma's needs, it is no wonder she jumps into the river, without even thinking, as if nothing in her life were worth staying in the boat for. In the modern day, Uma is invited to a coffee party thrown by Mrs. O'Henry, the Baptist missionary she admires. Mama and Papa say there is no good reason for Uma to go. Uma argues that Mama and Papa go out to see friends, but Mama say that they only go for Papa's career. Against their protests, Uma goes. At the coffee party, Uma stands out from the other Indian ladies, complimenting Mrs. O'Henry on the peanut butter sandwiches, strong coffee, and other American snacks. She shows interest in the cards that Mrs. O'Henry presses and stamps. Mrs. O'Henry sees Uma as having potential, perhaps to become Christian, and invites Uma to a Christian retreat in the mountains of Landor. Uma doesn't dare ask Mama and Papa if she can go. Instead, she returns home with a bundle of handmade cards, treasuring them as tokens of a fairy tale existence elsewhere. For Mama Papa, Uma can't leave the house just to enjoy herself or to make friends, because they don't recognize Uma's need for friendship or pleasure as legitimate. It is as if they view socializing as a bad thing, an evil that must be done only if one has no other choice. Uma calls them out on their hypocrisy, asserting herself by refusing to accept their excuses. What Mrs. O'Henry interprets as religious potential might be Uma's kindness and openness to new people and ideas. Uma treasures Mrs. O'Henry's handmade cards because they are relics of an exotic life, of the world outside, the world that Uma is hidden away from. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon, family life and individual freedom theme icon, plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon, tradition India versus modernity West theme icon, loneliness and togetherness theme icon. The novel flashes to an overview of Aaron's childhood, which centers entirely on school. Papa allows him no rest. All year round, Arun has a series of tutors hired to drill words, rules, facts and formulas into his brain. When finished each evening, his father urges him to go out and exercise, but Arun tiredly buries himself in comic books. When he reaches the end of his high school exams, Papa plunges him into applying for college, taking more tests, and applying for scholarships. When Aaron's letter of acceptance to the University of Massachusetts finally arrives, Arun shows no excitement or relief, only exhaustion. Uma packs his bags while his father rests and his mother cries in pride, but even as he departs, Arun shows no joy. Uma is saddened, wishing he would be happy so that at least someone would be happy, even if she cannot be. Mama Papa dedicate all of their efforts into Aaron's health and education, in contrast with their neglect of Uma in these areas. Yet, they force onto Arun the same high expectations as Uma. Just as Uma was never asked whether or not she wanted to marry or to live with Mama Papa forever, neither is Arun asked whether or not her wants to study hard and go to college in America. Arun can't enjoy his success because he isn't working for his own dreams, but rather for his father's. Even though he is given more opportunity and care than Uma, his emotional self is just as neglected as that of Uma. Themes. Summary analysis. Yume writing to Arun on behalf of Mama Papa, and Papa criticizes Uma for her slow writing and her inability to keep up with grammatical directions. The letter tells Arun that the sister of Mrs. O'Henry, Mrs. Patton, is inviting Arun to stay in her home in Massachusetts for the summer, since he won't have campus housing. Uma reminds her parents of how kind the O'Henry family turned out to be after all, but Mama Papa ignore her. Uma tells Papa she must be done writing because her eyes hurt, and Papa reproaches her for her weakness. She angrily reminds him that she has told him many times that her eyes hurt, and her mother supports her and says maybe Uma should see a specialist. Uma reminds Papa that he himself went to a doctor for glasses. Papa scoffs and eggs the conversation, turning a deaf ear to any further pleas. Papa fails to take responsibility for his role in creating the problems Uma experiences as an adult. The needs which Uma's parents have denied her, the opportunity to basic education and to receive medical care for her eyes, have led to the struggles in reading and writing, for which Papa criticizes Uma for His belief in his own rightness and his refusal to admit his own mistakes betrays the arrogance of his gender and social status. As the man of the house, he sees himself as godlike, infallible. Even when faced with the consequences of his neglect, he shuts down, fearful that he might be proven wrong. Themes: Gender and social roles theme icon family life and individual freedom theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon. Still in the modern day, a phone call comes from Mother Agnes at the convent, inviting Uma to come to the Christmas bazaar to help Mrs. Henry run her Christmas booth. Against the complaints of Mama Papa, Uma goes, and she describes the entire event as heaven. The paper crafts, the treats, the company, and the many people, pique Uma's curiosity and make Uma feel alive and involved. At the end, Uma finds a book of poetry for sale, and brings it home as a souvenir to remember the event. Uma deeply yearns to have things that are her own, to be involved in activities of her choosing, to seek new friends and experiences. While the Christmas bazaar may be nothing more than a yearly community holiday event, the event is magical to her because it provides her an opportunity to meet her needs to be social, creative, and independent. Themes: Family life and individual freedom theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon loneliness and togetherness theme icon. The novel tells the story of Mama's friend and neighbor, Mrs. Joshi, one of few people who Mama allows Uma to visit. Mrs. Joshi arrived to the neighborhood as a bride years before. Unlike most arranged marriages, Mr. and Mrs. Joshi were actually in love, and this sparked hatred from his mother, who punished the young bride. Mrs. Joshi often came running to Mama, and the two would end up laughing together. After the mother-in-law died, Mrs. Joshi took over her household, making it a cheerful place. Her children played freely and tried new things, and they all grew up successful in their marriages and careers. Uma remembers how one of Mrs. Joshi's daughters is pursuing a career of her own, and the thought makes her feel inspired and sad. She would like some kind of a career, but she can only dream vaguely of a life of wandering, unsupervised. With many of the wives and mothers in the novel living lives of either joyless submission to their husbands and families or of becoming mean themselves, Mrs. Joshi stands out as a woman who finds freedom in her marriage and family, and who passes her joy on to her household. She has known tyranny, and she is determined not to be tyrannical herself. Because she is in a marriage of love, rather than business, she is free to feel and express love and keep her spirit. By allowing her children, even her daughters, to choose their own paths, she asserts her own personality even within the structure of a traditional female role. Themes: After Mama Papa have Uma write the letter to Arun, they begin ordering Uma to do many chores at once. Uma finally snaps and storms away from them, running to her room and slamming the door. She finds the book of poetry from the Christmas bazaar, and she feels her emotions stir as she reads the poems, one about a rosebud that once, passionately waltzed, though now it has wilted, another in which a young man beckons to girl he loves that she fly away with him to see the world rather than remaining in the dark room where she stays. When Mama calls her through the door, Uma stamps out, throwing the book at her mother. She brings her father his coffee, while muttering to herself words from the poems. When she sets it down, she says to her father, this is what I know. And you don't. Fed up with her parents' demands, Uma is briefly driven by a built-up rage that tells her to listen to her own inner voice and to see her situation for what it is. While at some points in the novel it is unclear whether Uma is aware of how unique she is or of how unjust her life has been, in this passage, she is acutely aware that she has something her parents do not. The poetry she reads speaks to her own situation. She is like a rosebud that is in danger of wilting, but she never had the chance to waltz, she was never beckoned to fly away by anyone except herself. Themes: Family life and individual freedom theme icon plenty feasting versus want fasting theme icon. Quotes: Mira Masi makes one of her final visits to Uma's family. Uma asks the now aged Mira Masi whether she has found her little lord, a little statue of Shiva that she had lost, and Mira Masi only wails hysterically. Sometime after Mira Masi leaves, Laila Auntie comes to visit, and tells Mama and Uma that after much searching, Mira Masi did eventually find her little lord, in a bazaar in the south, and that she scared the shopkeeper into giving it to her. Through a great show of anger and loud prayers, drawing a crowd of people to follow her down to the sacred river to worship. Though Mama and Laila Auntie laugh, Uma reflects with sadness and joy that Mira Masi finally found what she was looking for. The lost statue of Shiva, Mira Masi's object of desire, the one thing she can't imagine living without, and without which she feels angry and incomplete. Everyone in the novel is looking for something that they think will make life complete, whether it is a good marriage for their daughters, a good education for their sons, higher social status, or in Uma's case, her own life. Mira Masi's hysterics echo the hysterics that often stir in Uma when she is most aware of her own lack. She is both happy for Mira Masi and sad for herself. Themes: family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: plenty, feasting, versus want, fasting. Theme icon: Dr. Dutt comes to visit Uma's house. Papa disapproves of Dr. Dutt is an unmarried woman with her own career, but because of her social rank, he feels he must entertain her. No nonsense, woman, she tells Mama Papa that she needs a capable lady to run the boarding house for her nursing school. She invites Uma for the job, and Uma's heart races with hopefulness. Mama Papa try to politely hide their anger at the invitation, and Mama sends Uma away to the kitchen. When Uma returns, Mama is seeing Drive Dutt off. She overhears Drive Dutt telling Mama something about coming to the clinic for hysterectomy tests, and how sorry she is that Uma must stay at home to care for her. Later, when Mama Papa aren't looking, Uma calls Drive Dutt to tell her that Mama is lying. Dr. Dutt promises to call Mama, but Uma never hears anything more. Dr. Dutt represents a new kind of woman in Indian society. Like Mira Masi, Drive Dutt has no authority figure in her life, and no family to look after. This leaves her free to pursue her vocation, just like Mira Masi. Yet, Drive Dutt is much more threatening to Papa. Because Papa relies on his dominance over women to reaffirm his importance, Drive Dutt's success disproves all of his convictions about male superiority. Knowing that their reasons won't seem right to the progressive Drive Dutt, Mama and Papa can't even admit to her why they deny Uma her own career, so they lie, keeping Uma from the only opportunity for a new life she is ever given. Themes: it is the middle of the night, and the electricity has faltered. Uma fetches Molly, their elderly groundskeeper, who emerges from his small shack and goes into town to fix it. Before his return, another figure is seen coming in the darkness, a man with a telegram. Just as the electricity comes on and Molly returns, they open the telegram. It states simply, Anamika is dead. Soon after, they hear the full story. Anamika was found burned to death by kerosene, wearing only a cheap nylon sari, before dawn on the porch outside her in-law's home. Different versions of the story float around. The mother-in-law claims Anamika snuck out before the house awoke and lit herself on fire, while the neighbors say that the mother-in-law dragged Anamika out in the middle of the night, with help from the husband, and burned her alive. Anamika's parents say whatever happened was destiny. The story of Anamika's death tragically symbolizes the final loss of female freedom, the loss of life. Whether it is suicide or murder is unclear, yet either way, it is the worst-case scenario, the final consequence of a traditional social system in which married women are treated as the property of their husbands. While marriage does not always bring a loss of freedom, Aruna and Mrs. Joshi are both examples to the contrary. It illustrates how much power husbands and in-laws can have if they choose to exercise it. Anamika's parents could have saved her at any point, but they chose to deny the reality of the situation to save face until it was too late. Themes: gender and social roles. Theme icon: family life and individual freedom. Theme icon: tradition, India versus modernity, West. Theme icon: Lila auntie and Bakul uncle come to deposit Anamika's ashes down the sacred river that runs alongside their town, the very one that Uma herself twice tried to jump into. Lila auntie and Bakul uncle do not speak, or eat, they only look down, while Mama and Papa try to cheer them up and to arrange everything. Uma cannot stop thinking about how Anamika is now only ashes, while she herself lives, and yet, she feels like ashes. The next day, the whole family boards a big wooden boat, and they float out into the river. Mama reaches for Uma's hand, and Uma feels the solace that at least they have each other. She tells Mama that she has asked Cook to make a special breakfast, and Mama is grateful for the little gesture, squeezing Uma's hand. Anamika's death brings out the love in Uma's parents, especially her mother. Witnessing the grief of Anamika's parents makes Mama want to draw closer to Uma. For a little while, Uma isn't alone, for her mother is cherishing her as she has seldom done. While it was Anamika who was supposed to have the best life, and Uma who once tried to die into the river, it is Anamika whose body will now be deposited there. Yet Uma raises the question, what is death? Is Anamika the one who is dead, or is it Uma, who does not feel alive? Themes: Summary analysis. It is summer in the United States now, and Arun is walking alone along a wooded lane in western Massachusetts. He is noticing the houses, all with trimmed green lawns and neat outdoor fixings, houses whose doors and windows are all shut and television lights flickering through the shades, the only sign of life. Cars come by and roll into the driveways, some almost running him off the road. The manicured, closed-up houses, the inhospitality to pedestrians, and the nauseating smell of barbecue, it all seems decadent, yet lifeless to Arun. He goes into the house to find Mrs. Patton unpacking the groceries, looking anxious about a can of stewed tomatoes, worried about what she and Arun will eat for dinner. Arun notices that unlike his village town in India, the American suburbs are full of flashy signs of wealth, of dedicated upkeep, and of what looks like an isolated existence. Americans seem to have more money, but they aren't around to enjoy their luxuries. Where are they? Inside their quiet houses with their televisions, inside their fast cars. The individualistic style of American life allows little room for a sense of community, and reflects an inhospitality that makes Arun feel disoriented. Themes. At the Patton house a little later, Mr. Patton is outside grilling steaks on a barbecue. He calls the family to eat, and Arun goes looking for Melanie, the Patton's teenage daughter, who sits sulkily at the bottom of the stairs, eating a bag of peanuts, and ignores Arun. Mr. Patton is angry that the two children, Melanie and Rod, won't come to the dinner that he made them. Mrs. Patton accepts the bloody, charred steak that Mr. Patton throws onto her plate, but Arun must nervously tell Mr. Patton that he is a vegetarian. Mrs. Patton mutters quietly that she is too, but Mr. Patton doesn't hear her. Mrs. Patton reminds Mr. Patton of Aaron's religious beliefs, but Mr. Patton says he can't understand how anyone could refuse a good steak. Arun reassures Mrs. Patton that he will have a salad and bun, remembering his own mother's sadness at his father's disappointment. While Arun has escaped his own family, the capacity of family to be oppressive has followed him even to America. Mr. Patton assumes the right to dictate when it is time for the family to eat, just as Papa dictated when it was time for the women to take a walk. Rather than making decisions together, Mr. Patton, like Papa, imposes his idea of what will be good for his family members onto them. Just like the manicured lawns with nobody to run around on them, Mr. Patton's steak is well prepared, yet there is nobody to enjoy it. Like Papa, he responds with anger when his authority is challenged. The novel rewinds to the months preceding the summer, to Aaron's first days at college. He remembers his college dorm for its striking foreignness, the loud music, the weekend parties, the cigarettes, the careless attitudes evident in conversation and bumper stickers alike. He remembers scanning his classrooms for people, and finding all of them undesirable for companionship. An older student sits down one day to have lunch with him, and he quickly excuses himself after she begins discussing her cervical cancer and tries to ask him about his own life. He realizes that he has a resistance to being included. When a group of Indian students try to involve him in their cooking nights and movie hangouts, he even rejects their company, preferring to be alone. After a life supervised by his parents, he thinks to himself that he desires solitude more than anything. Arun reacts very differently to new environments than does his sister Uma. Both Arun and Uma grew up surrounded by family, allowed very little solitude. Yet, Arun was the focus of much of his parents' worry and attention, unlike Uma, who was in many ways neglected. As adults, Uma craves human contact, and loves reaching out to new people and places in any setting. Yet, Arun rejects the efforts of others to get close to him. He doesn't want to be a part of any group, whether foreign or familiar. In his experience, being a part of a group always brings pressure and requires emotional energy. After years with his family, he has little emotional energy left. Themes. Summary analysis. In the months just before Aaron's first summer in America, he realizes he needs to search for summer housing. Having turned down the offer from his Indian classmates to join them in renting a house, he begins fruitlessly searching ads for a room to rent for the summer. Just as he begins to get desperate, he receives Papa's letter in Uma's handwriting, informing him that Mrs. Patton has offered her home to him for the summer. Disgruntled at his family's continual interference in his life, he arranges to come. On his first night at their house in the suburban countryside, he is given a nice room to himself, yet he is nevertheless upset at finding himself once again in a family unit. He asks Mrs. Patton if there are wild animals in the trees outside, and she jokes that the only wild animals around are the neighbors' children. As Arun has always been accustomed to having his need for food and shelter met by either his family or now the university, he hasn't developed the survival skills to make his own living arrangements. While Arun desperately desires to be independent, even in America, he must depend on family, both his own and someone else's, to help him meet his needs. Arun must accept the company of others for his own survival. He fears that even though he will have privacy, that more will be asked of him. For in his own family, his parents always wanted his obedience in return. Themes. Soon after Arun arrives to the Patton house, Mrs. Patton tells Arun that she hears from her sister that food in India is different, and that therefore she is sure he will want his own kind of food. He reassures her that he can get his meals in town when he works, secretly relieved that this arrangement will excuse him from having to sit down and eat with the family. It soon becomes apparent, however, that eating meals only in town won't be a good permanent solution. Mrs. Patton tells Arun that she would like to try vegetarianism, and that her only reason for not doing so sooner is her husband and her family's preference for meat. She gets excited about going vegetarian, and tells Arun that this will be a fun activity for them to do together, but he does not share her enthusiasm or desire to band together. Arun seeks any opportunity available to be alone, and the idea of eating by himself is preferable to eating with the Patton family and being forced to socialize. Mrs. Patton enthusiastically assumes that going vegetarian will connect her to Arun, but she is oblivious to his resistance to connecting with her or her family. Mrs. Patton has long conformed to American culture's tradition of meat eating, and only now does she feel empowered by the presence of a foreigner, whose difference she welcomes as an opportunity to assert her own differences as an individual. Themes. Summary analysis. Mrs. Patton excitedly takes Arun to the grocery store to shop for vegetables. Arun marvels at the huge parking lot full of big cars and the pristine rows of brightly packaged foods, and at Mrs. Patton's expert knowledge of reading packages. At home, Mrs. Patton puts all the food away, and to Aaron's surprise expects him to know what to do with it. He eats the packaged foods she gets unhappily, worrying that he will never break away from the cycle of women trying to mother him in unwanted ways. He feels that the American life is a plastic representation of what he had known at home. When Mrs. Patton finally tells her husband that she is trying vegetarianism, Mr. Patton ignores her, continuing to buy meat and pretend like everyone else will eat it. Arun sees that Mr. Patton, like Aaron's own father, ignores anything that challenges his authority. America seems to Arun like the land of plenty. Everywhere he goes, people have more and bigger material possessions than he's ever seen. The process of acquiring goods appears to be a big pastime. Mrs. Patton is an expert at buying things, but once she brings it all home, she doesn't turn her purchases into food. America has all the same basic staples as India: food, family, home, but in America, it's all packaging with nothing nourishing. Mr. Patton's reaction to Mrs. Patton shows his inability to accept his wife's right to make her own choices. Even in America, men can still assert their will over women. Summary analysis. After dinner the same night, Arun is on his way to his room, when he looks into the den to find Melanie sitting on the sofa, watching TV, commercials, dramatically and enthusiastically advertising everything from car insurance to dental wear. She is eating another bag of salted peanuts. When she sees Arun watching her, she stares him down, with an irritated and threatening look, until he goes away. Later that night, Arun hears noise and looks out his window to see the Patton's son Rod, eating leftover meat off the grill in the yard. A little while later, he looks out his window to see a raccoon foraging in the garbage. He leaves his bedroom to go outside, and on his way, finds Melanie on the bathroom floor, head over the toilet, throwing up. Her eyes are red and her makeup runs, and she tells him to go away. After all the effort Mr. Patton put into grilling the steak, the way that everyone in his house gets their dinner that night reflects the inability of the parents to meet the needs of each other and their children. Mrs. Patton nibbled at the steak reluctantly, Arun refused it, Rod came late at night and ate the remnants of the grill, and Melanie ate nothing but junk food, which she forced herself to throw up later. The foraging raccoon that Arun sees eating leftovers in the garbage is a metaphor for the members of the house. They are all foraging, trying to find nourishment through scraps. Themes. Summary analysis. Returning from work at the university library, Arun passes Rod, who handsomely jogs by, inviting Arun to join him. Arun turns him down, feeling embarrassed at his lack of athleticism. Later that night, Rod and Mr. Patton are on the downstairs couch, watching a football game and eating microwave taco dinners. Arun wishes he could join, but doesn't feel welcome. Mrs. Patton, on the other hand, eagerly invites Arun to cook Indian food with her. Not knowing how to cook, he begins to mix together all the Indian Isle ingredients Mrs. Patton bought. Melanie comes in and says that the food looks gross, and Arun agrees. He eats it anyway, to please Mrs. Patton. Later, he finds Melanie sitting on the staircase, eating Hershey's. He asks why she hasn't eaten, and she says it's his fault for making disgusting food. He feels somehow it is his fault, and wishes he could help. Rod and Mr. Patton seem to Arun like intimidating, brawny, sports-obsessed American guys. While he wishes he could be included in their men-only rituals, he feels inadequate, left out because he doesn't share their athletic world, or their culture. Even Rod's invitations scare Arun because he doesn't want to face the possibility of ridicule. Arun doesn't want to spend time with Mrs. Patton, because she silently demands that he make her feel like a good mother. Melanie's accusation that she isn't eating because of Arun makes him feel guilty, even though it is an illogical claim. His guilt comes from his own family, where his sister did suffer neglect because his parents were so focused on meeting his needs. Themes. Summary analysis. Returning from work at the university library, Arun passes Rod, who handsomely jogs by, inviting Arun to join him. Arun turns him down, feeling embarrassed at his lack of athleticism. Later that night, Rod and Mr. Patton are on the downstairs couch, watching a football game and eating microwave taco dinners. Arun wishes he could join, but doesn't feel welcome. Mrs. Patton, on the other hand, eagerly invites Arun to cook Indian food with her. Not knowing how to cook, he begins to mix together all the Indian Isle ingredients Mrs. Patton bought. Melanie comes in and says that the food looks gross, and Arun agrees. He eats it anyway, to please Mrs. Patton. Later, he finds Melanie sitting on the staircase, eating Hershey's. He asks why she hasn't eaten, and she says it's his fault for making disgusting food. He feels somehow it is his fault, and wishes he could help. Rod and Mr. Patton seem to Arun like intimidating, brawny, sports-obsessed American guys. While he wishes he could be included in their men-only rituals, he feels inadequate, left out because he doesn't share their athletic world, or their culture. Even Rod's invitations scare Arun because he doesn't want to face the possibility of ridicule. Arun doesn't want to spend time with Mrs. Patton, because she silently demands that he make her feel like a good mother. Melanie's accusation that she isn't eating because of Arun makes him feel guilty, even though it is an illogical claim. His guilt comes from his own family, where his sister did suffer neglect because his parents were so focused on meeting his needs. Themes.